What it do, what it do. This is the Brothers on Books podcast, episode 2. Now, the clue from last week in a succinct demand almost was be fearless. And we have for you a doozy today. We are discussing the 50th Law. Curtis Jackson, more popularly known as 50 Cent, did a compilation with the very famous Robert Greene in this book called The 50th Law. Al, how's it going? And you want to walk us through Robert Greene's works?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Pretty good.
Yeah, so Robert Greene, I mean, I think most people know who 50 Cent is, but Robert Greene is, I'd say, a little less known. He's I would say, a relatively famous author. He's written, I believe, 6 other books. Most of his books, by, I guess, many critics, are considered to be very manipulative and amoral. And people talk about how his books, try and teach people really how to, deceive people, manipulate people, gain power. There are a whole lot of books on how to really work the system and gain power. Probably his most famous book is The 48 Laws of Power, which is the most requested book in prison.
What? Really?
Yeah, and was subsequently banned. It was actually subsequently banned from many prisons because of some of the things it was teaching prisoners. And that's
what they were getting too good at running the show, or what?
They were getting too good at power dynamics and sort of getting underlings. But that actually comes about how this book happened. Is that I don't exactly remember the story of how 50 Cent and Robert Greene met.
I think it was 50 Cent liked I think it was the 48 Laws of Power.
Right? And he came up to Robert Greene and talked to him about it, and he sort of told him his story, and they decided that they would do a collaboration. And the way all of Robert Greene's books, or the ones that I've read now, 4 of his books, and he's written 6, work is he has some type of, human trait that has enabled, person X, whoever the book or the chapter or just a subsection's about, to gain, success. And then he sort of goes into why this trait is successful. So in the 48 Laws of Power, he has 48 laws, and then he highlights a variety of different people, and he explains how these different traits are used by these really historical figures to gain power.
So was there a lot of overlap between the 50th Law and these other books in terms of the people he kind of focuses on?
Between the 50th Law and some of the other ones, there wasn't a huge amount of overlap, but the people he really tends to talk about are Napoleon, Talleyrand. He talks about Mao a lot, and then just...
What about Machiavelli? It seemed like you mentioned.
Yeah, Machiavelli's spoken about a lot.
Yeah.
So the books I've read are The 48 Laws of Power, The Art of Seduction, Laws of Human Nature, which I would actually say was probably my favorite. And then the one that I'm looking forward to reading next is a book called Mastery, which would probably be most analogous to this, the 50th Law, which is, from what I've read, every chapter is a sort of a biopic on one very successful person and how they became successful. So what the 50th Law really is, Robert Greene boiled down, I guess, Curtis Jackson's success into one trait of power, which was be fearless, which was what our clue for the, this book was. Yeah. And then he subdivided be fearless into then 10 chapters. Each chapter, was then a subdivision of being fearless. Like, so the first chapter is like, see the world in intense reality. The second chapter is like, make everything your own, and it keeps going on. And it's all about how, 50 used these rules to become successful. And he then highlights other people in history that have done these same things, and how they've used that to, further their career, further their talents, just further their life. So I guess with that said, I guess Jack, what were your thoughts after finishing the book?
After finishing the book, so he talks a lot about being like nimble and flexible and constantly reinventing yourself, which is good. Well, one thing that was kind of weird that I noticed was he mentions his son only once, and it was only one son. And I actually kind of thought it was odd. He didn't talk much, about reinventing himself as a father. As odd as that sounds out of this whole book, I thought it was kind of odd. He kind of just glossed over that. And it might have been just because he didn't have a dad. And he talks about his mom a lot, but he didn't really talk about how, he talks about, 50, the rapper, and then, the businessman, but he doesn't really talk about, Curtis Jackson, the father, or like the friend. It's a lot about just controlling power, not as much about maintaining relationships.
Yeah, I didn't notice that. It's something I didn't notice at all. I think that probably goes back to why a lot of people have a problem with Robert Greene, is that all of his books are about, intense power dynamics and really, sort of how to use people to get what you want. I guess, do you have any other thoughts?
Those, I thought it was a great book. I like the structure of it, how they kind of, talk about 50 and then, kind of give you a rundown list of these are the things you should do to get this characteristic or, build this skill. And then kind of ways at the end of each chapter, it's called, what do they call it? Reverting perspective?
The reversal perspective.
Yeah, reversal perspective is a little subsection in each chapter where he talks about what you can do to, reverse your perspective. So I like the structure of the book. I found it very interesting. I would have never thought 50 Cent kind of thought this way. And it's kind of just, he's been thinking this way from such a young age. He was always like grinding, and he, says hustling on the streets. It really made him be fully awake from such a young age, where most people can kind of enjoy their childhood, but he was kind of a grown up from a very young age.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I wasn't worried about having to, buy clothes when I was, I think, what do you say, like 11 or 12?
Yeah.
I don't think, from a similar childhood experience, I don't think you were either. I thought the book was, I don't particularly like 50 Cent's music, but after reading this, I thought it was incredible. I had a huge amount of respect for him, and just, how creative he was, and so how driven to just continue to hustle and try and make it.
Yeah, he was a very good businessman for sure. I liked how it kind of overlaps some with like the 4-Hour Work Week and some of those other business books where you're constantly trying to improve a product, and he does spend a good bit of time talking about being very close with his fans and getting constant feedback, so he doesn't waste his time, making something that people don't really want. I kind of like that message.
That was you're referring to when he was putting out songs on like his website.
Yeah, exactly.
This was sort of before that was, I guess the internet was around. This would have been like the mid 2000s, I think. That wasn't like now where you can just, any Joe Schmo can go make a website and put out music. That took some, I guess it was just before the time, right? That he had that insight to go do that. And not only that, but I think he said he put out his rivals' music too, and saw that people liked it. And he was, why? I don't remember which rapper it was, but he posted another rapper's songs and saw that his fans liked it. Sort of was asking them, well, why do you like his song but not my song? And he got the feedback, and then reevaluated the music he was making.
Right.
And that's just like, I think any good person, any good successful person in life, you take feedback and you reevaluate. And I don't exactly remember what the quote off the top of my head it was, but I think it was something along the lines of, the public's always talking to you. If you're not listening, you're just stupid. Or I think I got that wrong, but that was the general gist of it.
Yeah, that was the part where he's kind of talking about like, they're not necessarily saying they don't like a product, but it's kind of like they're putting up a mirror for you to look into, right? Because they're you can kind of see yourself, or you need to look in the mirror. Okay, so are we ready for an ad?
Yeah, let's
our first ad on the Brothers on Books podcast. Okay.
Yeah.
I barely ever buy clothes, but there are a couple things I've been buying twice every year for the past 5 years. And this is the pair of thieves underwear and socks. I buy Lucky underwear and socks before every actuarial exam, and they are so comfy and uniquely stylish. Go to pairofthieves.com or your neighborhood Target to peruse their selection. Why be just one when you could be a pair of thieves? Okay, now back to the podcast. I guess, what do you want to get into now? We kind of already went through the chapters, actually, the framework. So you wanna give your breakdown on one of your favorite chapters?
Oh yeah, that's fine. So I guess my favorite chapter in the book was chapter 2, Make Everything Your Own, Self-Reliance. I mean, the bulk of this chapter is just talking about how, you should strive to be an owner and not strive to be an employee. It's really like an employee versus an employer mentality. And I guess I'll just open up with, at the beginning of every chapter, he has a relatively long, just almost a paragraph. And I just sort of would like to open up with the beginning of this.
Sure.
Which is, when you work for others, you are at their mercy. They own your work, they own you. Your creative spirit is squashed. What keeps you in such positions is a fear of having to sink or swim on your own. Instead, you should have a greater fear of what will happen to you if you remain dependent on others for power. Your goal in every maneuver in life must be ownership. Working the corner for yourself when it is yours to lose. You are more motivated, more creative, more alive. The ultimate power in life is to be completely self-reliant, completely yourself.
Nice.
I mean, this is to me, this totally resonates with me, and I guess just how I currently feel about my own life, and that, just tired of working for other people, feel like you're sort of given the short end a lot because you don't own it. You don't own what you do. And, I feel like a couple times in my life, I've felt that even though I've done a whole lot of work, I was not able to reap the benefits of that work because I don't truly own what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing the same is for you as well.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's like when you spend a lot of time doing something, you want to
reap the benefits,
right?
Yeah.
And the only way to really reap the benefits is to be the owner.
Yeah.
And I just, lately in my own life, I felt it is much more motivating when, when you're trying to build something your own and you work towards being an owner, you can truly reap the benefits. And he had another quote in here. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, he's talking. This is this is right after he got out of jail. 50's talking about how when he gets out of jail, someone gave him a job bagging drugs. And he realizes really quickly, if he just starts bagging drugs, he's always going to be bagging drugs. And that's what his life will be. And he doesn't want to be a drug bagger. So what he does, and I mean, this just sort of shows, 50's, creative spirit, which I think every entrepreneur needs. What he does is he teaches all the other baggers how to, and I guess, I've never done crack, but I guess when you're bagging crack, they come in capsules or something, and he teaches all the baggers how to put I'm
filler,
guessing,
right?
Yeah, filler. It doesn't exactly say what the filler is.
Yeah,
but he teaches all the baggers how to put the filler in the capsule and then siphon off the drugs. And in lieu of doing this, they siphon off the drugs, and he gives them all the money that he was being paid to bag drugs. And then in 2 weeks, he had his own drug supply, and he had enough money to then start
working that new drugs,
corner. And he started, working the new corner and started up his hustle again. And he sort of he grew from there, and it was great. And he then talks about how after he became a musician, he felt that the executives were doing the same thing. They were trying to. He felt like even though he was now getting paid a lot more and he was a famous rapper, they wanted him to do things on his terms.
Yeah, so this was Columbia Records, I think.
Yeah. No, this was with Interscope. I think this is after when he signed with Eminem.
Okay.
But he, what he did was instead of be dependent on how they want to portray him, he went out and shot his own music videos with his own money, did his own marketing, and then at the end, he learned everything. Interscope just felt like he was saving him all this money, but at the end, he was then totally independent of them, and he was able to go out and do it himself. And this, so he pretty much used Interscope to teach himself everything, and then this led to him creating his own website, and I think he eventually started his own record. So I mean, I thought that was pretty great. And then he goes on to talk about how, there are 4 rules really of how you should sort of move forward to how you should reclaim ownership of yourself and all of your product. And the first rule was reclaim dead time.
Okay.
And what he means by that is, for the most part, everyone has a job. And I found that I do this too. And that when you're at your job, a lot of times people, even if it's a mundane job, just sort of clock in and then count down, the time till they can clock out.
Mm-hmm.
But really, when you're at your job, you should view that as time to learn everything you can possibly learn.
Mm-hmm.
And he cites, Robert Greene then cites Cornelius Vanderbilt, who, when he was 12, his father made him start working in the shipping company. And he decided that he was going to start a shipping company. So as he was from 12 to 16, he started, this drudgery of working in the shipping company. He used this time to learn everything he could about a shipping company. Mm-hmm. And then when he was 16, he borrowed money from his mom and then subsequently started a shipping company. And then Vanderbilt has a great quote, "Never be a minion, always be an owner," which, I would say resonated with me as well, which is something sort of I feel like I'm trying to strive for.
Okay, cool.
And I don't remember exactly where I heard this, and I know it wasn't in the book, but I remember hearing that at the height of Vanderbilt's wealth, adjusted for inflation, he was worth 3 times more than Bill Gates at Bill Gates' height of wealth.
Wow.
Which is just mind-boggling, right? Yeah. So the second step to working towards ownership is create little empires. And this actually kind of ties back into one of the points we talked about last week in The Richest Man in Babylon, which is what he's saying is that you really want to be, in whatever you're doing, you want responsibility. A lot of people opt not to want responsibility, but you want to have responsibility to show that you can create things on your own. And even if you fail, you still learn something. And as long as you're learning when you fail, it's okay. And what he ends up saying is that if you ever have the choice between taking more money or more responsibility, so, less money, but more creative freedom to do things with your position, you should take the one with the less, with the more freedom, the less money, versus the more money, but more constrained. And he just says this gives you more of the sort of the entrepreneurial mindset and allows you to expand more.
I remember along those lines, I think Robert Greene went into a small tangent at some point and described that authority came from, I'm going to botch the pronunciation. It was like a Latin term, autore or something. But it means
create.
It means to create. Authority
right.
comes from the verb to create.
Right. So as long as you're creating, you're the, I guess, the author.
Yeah. You're authoring your own, path, I guess.
Right. Kind of. So the third step was to move higher up the food chain. And what he means by this is this is just sort of you just gotta work hard, you gotta hustle, you gotta work your way up the ladder. And he gives a sort of a segue into talking about Caesar Borgia from Italy in the 15th century, and how he sort of climbed his way up his family ladder. And I think he was going to, knock out the French king from Italy, which is, I'm not sure of the political affairs of, 15th century Europe. But I guess Italy and France were tied together in some way, and Borgia was trying to expel the French from Italy. And he had kind of done this, but he fell ill and then had a somewhat untimely death. So he was never able to really do it.
Okay.
And then the fourth step was make your enterprise a reflection of your individuality. So this is sort of like a branding and a improvement lesson. And all this is really saying is that, you are unique. No one on the word is like you, and you should stand out. And it's a mix of that, and it's a mix that, you should always strive every day to be better. Just always constantly trying to improve yourself. You should always invest in yourself, always, read more, always learn more. Okay. And that was really, the bulk of the chapter. I guess what chapter did you want to talk about?
I'm going to speak on chapter 8, which is respect the process, and is oddly enough a chapter on mastery, which happens to be one of Robert Greene's other books. I liked how you kind of read the intro, so I'll do the same. The fools in life want things fast and easy: money, success, attention. Boredom is their great enemy and fear. Whatever they manage to get slips through their hands as fast as it comes in. You, on the other hand, want to outlast your rivals. You are building the foundation for something that can continue to expand. To make this happen, you will have to serve an apprenticeship. You must learn early on to endure the hours of practice and drudgery, knowing that in the end, all of that time will translate into a higher pleasure, mastery of a craft and of yourself. Your goal is to reach the ultimate skill level, an intuitive feel for what must come next. And there's another touch on, dealing with the drudgery. He does speak a lot on how you combat boredom. They kind of speak to the fact that as technology has progressed, we have built in more downtime for us. And what do? People, need to get the boredom out. So what do? They go to their phones, they do this, they do that, unproductive things. They worry about the future, things like that. So he talks about boredom a lot in this chapter and how you need to kind of embrace it. There's a great part, and it's very fitting right now since we're going through a pandemic, where he talks about Sir Isaac Newton. Now, in 1665, young Isaac Newton was studying in London, and there happened to be a pandemic. And what a lot of his, fellow classmates did was they fled to the countryside. So he went to the countryside with his mom. I think it was like, I forget the city, Lincolnshire or somewhere. And for 20 straight months, he spent time inside doing math problems that had given him and his professors problems during the school year. And basically what most people would say, like, oh, how boring to be like all by yourself and isolated. But he really took that period of forced isolation to, transform himself into what we consider a genius. And a lot of people prior to that 20 months did not speak of him as a genius. So, he was really embracing this idea of, isolation and all that to really master his craft.
Just master something.
Yeah.
I think a good number of people have, really elevated themselves during this pandemic.
Yeah.
In some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about if, the next Sir Isaac Newton will come out of this pandemic. So the list they gave in this chapter was 5 strategies for developing the proper relationship to process. So this is all about, doing the drudgery and putting in the hard hours to actually master something. And before I get to the list, 50 Cent did have a good quote about boredom and about progressing. He said, "Most people can't handle boredom. That means they can't stay on one thing until they get good at it. And then they wonder why they're not happy."
Yeah, that was a great quote.
So that was a good quote. Okay, so back to 5 strategies for developing the proper relationship to process. Okay, number 1 is progress through trial and error. Don't be afraid to try things out. He talked about a boxer named Jack Johnson, and he basically would try to extend the fights just to pick up more like data points and be able to learn more in the ring, because a lot of boxers, you're not really in live fights for that long.
Well, that was in the beginning, right, when he was getting beat up, because I don't think he had like a training. He couldn't train because he was black, I believe, right?
Maybe that was I forget that actually.
So he had to just train by fighting people, like
live fights. Oh yeah, that sounds right. So progress through trial and error. Don't be afraid to try things and fail. Number 2 was master something simple. And this whole idea is you build confidence through something simple, and then you build upon that. So he talks about creating a pattern of confidence that will continue to rise. So I started thinking about things that I kind of would like to start, but is there a way I could do something simple to start along that path? And I have been kind of interested in woodworking, and I had found an article about if you can construct a cube out of wood, you basically can do 70% of all the types of cuts and stuff that you would need. I was kind of surprised by that, but it sounded simple and something that would definitely build confidence. I don't know. You have anything
Like
that
just an actual cube
a
or
cube out of wood, yeah.
okay. I mean,
Because I
yeah.
guess you got to check, all the angles. You got to make sure everything's flush.
Yeah, I mean, getting it's one thing I know. Getting things flush and level is quite seems to be quite difficult. So
Yeah,
yeah, I could believe that.
yeah. So, thought that was kind of a good piece of wisdom. Start simple. Number 3 was internalize the rules of the game. Know how something works, even if corrupt, and then begin to take it apart for good. I thought that was a good way to think about it. Like if you're unhappy with how something works, the best way to go about it is, learn the current state, figure out, the shortfalls, and then you can kind of reconstruct it. He also talks about, he goes a little bit on a tangent, like political and social games. I guess I was kind of, I don't know. Do you have any like,
I mean, I don't exactly remember that section, but I could definitely see him talking about how politics are corrupt and
right? Or it's like if if you're kind of tired of how the education system works, well, one of the best ways to change it might be to actually go and work in education, learn how the system works, and then you might be able to change it because you've
yeah, because you
internalized the
might as
rules of how it
yeah
operates.
yeah I
So
agree.
okay, so then number 4 was attune yourself to the details. So in this part, I like this. He talks about Michelangelo, and he tries replicating his favorite artworks. And what happens by doing this is he realizes certain brushstrokes are used, and then he can kind of dissect how to make things that he likes. And he also literally started dissecting humans to learn the bone structure for his sculptures. And I thought this was interesting also from a way like if you really like the type of music, I thought you could go, you know, look up how the chord progressions or how is that music constructed, and then if you want to blend it with other music, you can try to, but you need to know, the details, and it kind of goes with the last one, you internalize the rules, but you can kind of learn, the chord progressions or how these famous people are using sounds and chords to make music, and then maybe you could do that also. Number 5 was rediscover your natural persistence. Here's a quote: "You cannot persist on 2 or 3 paths, so avoid the temptation." It's kind of just saying, you gotta have a solid goal in mind. It's got to be really strong, and you can't veer off the path too much. You got to keep going after the goal. He also talks about, having these big goals broken up into smaller mini goals, so you get some, you know, satisfaction every once in a while that you're actually working towards your goal.
Like you accomplished something.
Yeah, you,
Yeah.
you want to be able to feel the progress. I don't know, like for, I don't know, a kid, growing up wanting to be a huge soccer star. Well, 7, 8 years old, what were we trying to? We were trying to juggle like 7, 8 times.
Times, yeah.
So like you could, break it up like, oh, I want my juggling, record to be like, 30. And then pretty soon you get to
Yeah.
100 and then 1,000. So all those things you can work towards as part of the larger goal. Okay. And then he kind of finished off the chapter with a good thought on the reversal of perspective, and it goes, try to look at boredom from the opposite perspective as a call for you to slow yourself down, to stop searching for endless distractions. Kind of like, embrace the boredom. You have to just slow down, and you'll start thinking clear. Don't always go looking for that immediate gratification.
Let's just
So
be, I mean, the thing that I always get a lot is be present. Like,
yeah,
be present in what you're doing, regardless of what you're doing. And, you know, maybe you'll learn something from it.
yeah. So with that, do you have like a favorite quote or message from the book?
You know, I mean, I felt like overall the book, I mean, I personally find almost all of his work very empowering. Uh, you know, I think it just motivates people to, you know, take responsibility themselves and like work hard to try and achieve something. I think probably the best, I wouldn't say it was necessarily the best quote, but I would say the most interesting quote that was in the book was actually a 50 Cent quote. Robert Greene quotes, for the people who haven't read him, he quotes a real lot of people throughout this. But and the quote that I really enjoyed was 50 Cent is a person I created. Soon it will be time to destroy him and become someone else. And sort of this was in uh, a chapter called Keep Moving, which was about calculated momentum. And what he's saying is like, you know, he's not really 50 Cent, he's really Curtis Jackson, but he created 50 Cent for his music career. And by the, you know, the general public, he's known as 50 Cent.
Uh-huh.
But really 50 Cent is a vehicle that has allowed Curtis Jackson to become, you know, a music mogul. And now he has all these other business ventures, like he's,
Yep.
you know, he's got vitamin water and all this other stuff. And, you know, he's just saying at some point, you know, he'll really just 100% revert back to being Curtis Jackson, and 50 Cent will just sort of be a memory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes with, you know, the big theme of always reinventing yourself.
Right. I mean, I think you said it in the beginning, be formless.
Yeah, like water.
And ironically, the 48th law in the 48 laws of power is actually titled Be Formless. So
Really?
that is a reoccurring theme in a lot of his books, is that you have to constantly be adapting, constantly be changing. And as long as you can adapt and evolve, you know, no one can peg you down and you can always survive. The other really good point I think he made was the point of move before you're ready. And what he meant by that is you need to, whatever you're doing, you need to start doing it before no one in life is ever 100% ready to do something. But you should really start doing whatever it is you want to do. You should just start. And the process, the action of starting will, I guess, catapult you into, you know, sort of elevating yourself to a new level and allow you to figure out what you need to do. And I think the guys on Bigger Pockets, I think, talk about this a lot of just, you know, starting to do something before you're ready and just figuring it out along your way.
Yeah, because you gain experience, and also
Right.
they talk about, like, you know, once you start doing something, if you're in the driver's seat, I mean, you're actively doing it. So
Right. Yeah.
you start thinking a lot clearer,
Right.
and with a lot more intention.
Plus you're committed, and, you know, it either will positively affect you or negatively affect you.
Yeah.
And when you have the burden of the outcome, you want it to positively affect you. So it motivates you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, right? Like, because everyone wants to make like the perfect decision or, you know, reason perfectly, but the fact of the matter is, like, you'll never
have all the
you'll never have all the facts,
right.
and there's no such thing as a perfect decision.
I think that sort of goes back, if you look into those case studies on CEOs. Like, the best CEOs are able to make, you know, decisions with, like, and they usually draw it out as a percentage of like the information. Like the CEOs that flounder like need all the information, but by the time you have all the information,
the time has passed.
The time has passed. So they say I think it's 70%. The best CEOs can make an informed decision with like 70% of the information, and just go from there.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's cool. That's cool.
I guess what were your main takeaways of this book?
Well, in terms of my like favorite parts, I guess piggybacking off of like being formless, he's got like these 4 types of flows, he calls them, and like it's, you know, how to like flow with what's happening, flow with the times that are changing. And there's one flow that he refers to as mental flow, in terms of reinventing how your mind works all the time and how you think and how you interact with the world. And they talk about Leonardo da Vinci, you know, he was a youth in like the mid 15th century, did not have an education. And they kind of talk about how his mind was kind of freed from all those prejudices and like rigid categories that prevailed at the time. So, you know, he started doing an apprenticeship in art, and then he kind of flowed from one area to the next. So he went, you know, art to architecture, engineering, and then it got kind of way different, like making war machines, and then, you know, the mechanics of animals and the mechanics of humans. So, and ever since I read that book by Jacob Lund Fisker called Early Retirement Extreme, he kind of brings up this idea of the Renaissance man, or like the generalist who can do a little bit of everything. And in that mental flow part, they kind of said that they would consider Leonardo da Vinci kind of the first Renaissance man. So the first like true generalist. So I kind of like that. There was a quote in that chapter also in that section that said all the greatest inventions in history come from an openness to discovery, one idea leading to another, sometimes coming from unrelated fields. So I think it might take the generalist maybe longer in life to really become successful, because in the beginning it might just look like they're struggling and bouncing from area to area, but maybe that's really kind of the way to go, to flow, and then you can create connections between all these areas that you've pursued in the past.
It's also, you know, it's also very, you know, contrary to what we as a society like preach, right? Like everyone's very like, oh, specialize.
Yeah, and
you
I
know,
think
I sort of agree that it's much better to be well-rounded in many different fields than totally specialized.
Yeah, and they were kind of, I mean, Robert Greene was kind of saying that like the specialization, it kind of goes in cycles. And at the time of Leonardo da Vinci, it was also kind of like these rigid categories, whether, you know, were you a philosopher or were you a scientist? And you couldn't be like a little bit of all of them.
Yeah.
So, and Leonardo da Vinci kind of like bounced around between those categories that, you know, were supposedly rigid, but he kind of broke those.
So that's the part. He also started talking about, I think, Jane Goodall, the famous like monkey.
Yeah.
When everyone had these preconceived notions of, I think it was chimpanzees, and then when she went in with really no scientific background, she developed all these other like, you know, philosophies that she sort of experimentally proved from her.
Yeah, and like everyone was telling her, you know, you can't go so close to the chimps, or
Right, yeah,
you have to hide behind like this makeshift like bush. But she didn't do that. She kind of tried to open herself up, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then she talked about how she was noticing the same monkeys going by her, and they were letting her get closer. And what else? She also,
well, she
they
said
were like fighting a lot too, weren't they?
she said, yeah, she said she noticed a war between rival groups. She said she noticed chimpanzees using tools, which at the time was thought only humans could use tools. I think, she named them with actual names instead of numbers. I'm trying to remember what the other ones were. Uh, and then she said she noticed a clear difference in intelligence levels between the chimpanzees, which, I'm sure at the time was probably just viewed that all chimpanzees are, probably just viewed as like so unintelligible, like it doesn't matter, which is, I think we can pretty clearly say today is not true. So yeah.
I guess I guess I did have one more quote that I did really like. I mean, a lot of this stuff is really just it's all mental, right? I mean,
Yeah,
like a lot of getting to your goals, like just believing you can do it is like half the battle. And
yeah.
but I like this part. He was talking about liberty, and I'll read you this paragraph. There is, however, a completely different concept of liberty. It is not something that people grant us as a privilege or right. It is a state of mind that we must work to attain and hold on to, which with much effort. It is something active and not passive. It comes from exercising free will. In our day-to-day affairs, much of our actions are not free and independent. We tend to conform to society's norms in behavior and thinking. We generally act out of habit without much thought as to why we do things. When we act with freedom, we ignore any pressures to conform. We step beyond our usual routines, asserting our will and our individuality. We move on our own. And I just thought that is such a good paragraph, in that like freedom is definitely a active act and not passive. Just because, I guess you grew up in the United States doesn't make you free. It's more of like a mental state. Like you have to act on your own, just because everyone else has a job or whatever. Does that really make you happy? Would you be more happy, living off the land in Alaska? Or just constantly questioning, why you're doing what you're doing, and acting with true freedom. And I just really like that part.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. I guess the last thing that I would add is he makes a point of saying your opinion of yourself becomes your reality, and that kind of goes back to just it sort of ties into like if you truly believe you can do something, or you truly believe you are something, if you just keep telling yourself, it's possible, that's like half the battle. It's just almost, convincing yourself you can do it. And it sort of goes back into a different book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, where he talks, I think we've spoken about this before, where he talks about like saying a mantra, before you go to bed and when you wake up, just telling yourself like what you want to accomplish. And it's like, he was just saying like, just telling yourself repeatedly that you can do something, you start to believe that you can do it. And if you believe you can do it, at some point, you probably can do it. And I think it's very, very powerful how you as a human can sort of like trick yourself into believing you can do something.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I think most people overestimate probably how much influence they can have on others, but they underestimate, I'd say, the influence they can have on themselves.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to change other people. You know, they spend time on Facebook trying to change other people's views when they'd be better off just focusing on themselves and trying to change their own life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff. So with that being said, do you have anything else, or think we're good?
Overall, I really enjoyed the book. I thought it was a great read.
Yeah.
I think everything I've read of Robert Greene, I've thoroughly enjoyed. Highly recommend all of the books I've read of his.
Which one's your favorite so far?
My favorite one was probably, I would say it's probably The Laws of Human Nature. Probably actually this one of those two. I was planning on buying his book Mastery, so maybe at some point we'll do that as well.
Yeah. See, I see him in like they're normally in the business section, right? I feel like I've seen them a lot of times.
They're always in the business section.
Yeah. So, but they are big books. I think that's what's deterred me in the past. But the 50th Law.
It wasn't that long.
It wasn't that long. It was like almost. It was a little under 300.
Yeah.
But some of those other ones like huge. So I think that's why I haven't. But yeah, I think this was a good first step into Robert Greene stuff.
Yeah.
So, okay, Al. Well, first of all, I guess we'd like to point out that you can email us at brothersonbooks@gmail.com if you have any recommendations on books we discuss, or if you'd like to be on to discuss with us, we would love to have you. So once again, we're brothersonbooks@gmail.com. And for the teaser for next week, what do you got for us, Al?
Yeah, it's this is going to be a tough one, but for our fans out there that can get it, the teaser is thinking about how you should make bets.
Okay.
That's what I got.
Thinking about making bets. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we always close off the show with a good song that we found on YouTube while studying and whatnot. And no lyrics, but this is J-Hove featuring Bert, Away From Home. And we will see you next time. Bye.